Tonight's video about the pricing, or the secret to Games Workshop's pricing. And there's a lot of people have opinions on this. I'm sure some people understand sort of quite well why things are priced the way they are, but there's a lot of rumours, there's a lot of kind of people think they know the answer. So some of the reasons that's come up, what I've seen either today or in the chat here, or I've seen it elsewhere, is things like the cost to produce it costs more. So some models cost more because they cost more to produce. Some models cost more because their points in the game are more. So they almost, there's a link to pricing and points cost. Some people say that it depends how many you'll buy. So if it's a model you'll buy more of, they're a little bit cheaper. If you're only going to buy one of it, they're more expensive. And many people have said greed, as that 1000% markup thing said before. Now, some of those definitely are factors, but they're not the full picture. So let's talk about materials and all that kind of stuff. So there are a lot of things that go into producing a miniature for Games Workshop, and these things are relevant for other companies too, so please bear that in mind. But there is the cost of a concept artist who's going to kind of design the original sort of concept for it, for want of a better word. You've got to pay a sculptor, somebody to sculpt the model. There's going to be some kind of an engineer to cut it into into the parts that will make up the sprue. That is almost it's a separate job. The companies that don't use a separate person tend to end up with the ones that have the mold lines in weird places and stuff. Games Workshop have kind of really got that down really well now. Steel molds need to be produced. You all know steel molds are very expensive for plastic miniatures. They need to be produced. They need to pay an artist to paint that model, so when they take photographs for the pack shots and for advertising and stuff, they've got all of that work done. There's a packaging guy to basically design the packaging and to kind of sort of make the cardboard box design, if you like. They've got to manufacture that packaging. They've got to manufacture the sprues. They've got somebody assembles all of this stuff. So somebody erects those cardboard boxes and packs those boxes with the instruction booklets and sprues. You've got the warehousing costs. These have all got to sit in a warehouse or somewhere before they go out. We've got marketing costs. Like Warhammer Community isn't free. It's a cost on the business. We've got shipping costs. They get shipped all over the world. And then there's a million different things as well that I won't go into all those details. Now, the cost of this is actually quite huge, and this could run up to about £100,000 before you even make a sprue. Like steel molds are very, very expensive. We can be talking 50,000, 60,000 for a mold. The actual plastic material itself is pretty low, and in the grand scheme of things, it has very little to do with the cost of the models. So let's take a look at, let me get my screen on the right one. Let's take a look at Techless here. So Techless, as you can see, this is in Great British pounds. This is £105. Now that's what's prompted this conversation. This is the first single model I think we've had that has been over £100. There is a model, I think it's Archeon, is £100, but this is the first one that's gone past that barrier. And it's like £105 is a lot of money for one model. No matter how big it is, no matter how many points it is. I mean, people are saying it's about 660 points. It's like a third of your army. It's kind of irrelevant, really. It's £105 for one model. Now, you start converting that, it's 130 euros, it's 170 US dollars, and it's 280 Australian dollars. Now, it says on the screen here, if I can, excuse me if I'm looking up as well, that's where my monitor is, so I can see it. It says here in the description that this set contains Techless and Selnor Spirit of Hyge, a single miniature supplied in 70 plastic components on one base, which is a 160mm round base. And I know people saying, oh, well, it's a 160mm base. It's huge, which is a fair point. It is a big base. However, if you go to the Warhammer page here and you filter it by all of the hero models, because these are essentially a similar model. There are models that basically just have that one. You can only use one of them in your army. They're the big kind of centerpiece leaders. And I have filtered it by highest price to lowest. And no surprise, Techless there is there at the top. Archeon there as well is at £100. But if I scroll down a bit further and keep going here, we will come to, if I can find her, have I gone too far there? Anyway, I've got another screen here. We'll come to Alariel, the Ever Queen, from what they're called again. You know what they're from. I can't find the name now. I can't find the name. I can't remember anywhere. From everybody's going to be telling me in the chat now anyway. Yes, from this army, right? So she is £85. So by no means cheap. Sylvaneth, yes, everybody's just screaming at me there. She is by no means cheap. She's £85, but she is 20 quid cheaper than Teclis. Now, again, in the description, it says that she comes with 79 components in total with a appropriately huge Citadel 160mm base. So she comes with roughly the same amount of components to build her. She comes on the same size base. And if you look here, you will see there are 2 sprues that make up this model. And I've counted the bits to make sure there are 79 bits on those 2 sprues. And if we go back to Teclis, again, there are 2 sprues here, and I've counted these, and there are 70 parts on those sprues. So the sculpt, everything I've just talked about from a manufacturing point of view should, in theory, be completely equal for those 2 parts, for those 2 miniatures. So it's not materials, it's not sculpting, it's not time, it's not any of that kind of stuff. Let me go back to this screen here. So let's say, just for argument's sake, let's say it's £100,000, basically upfront costs before they've kind of even made a sprue or before it's even gone out of the door. Now, to pay back these costs, you also need to make a profit margin on these. Remember, Games Workshop has shareholders. It's all about profits and margins and everything else. You need to sell X amount of miniatures that you've made at X price. And this is where it starts to kind of come in now. So GW have an idea of how many of these Teclis models they're likely to sell. For example, Marine unit troops. So if you're going to buy your standard kind of intercessors, you're going to sell lots of them. People will buy multiples of this box over the time of building an army, and they are a very popular kind of model. The fact that people paint lots of different chapters, there are multiple people buying these models. For a lot of people, this is the first model they ever buy just to give the kind of hobby a try. So they're going to sell lots of those. When it comes to a hero model for Age of Sigmar, it's going to sell a lot less. So the number of potential buyers for Teclis is a lot lower, and you'll likely probably only ever buy one of these things. Most people who do buy it will only ever buy one. And the most people that kind of buy this will either be somebody who's a bit of a painter or a collector, and they just like the model and they want to have it in their collection, so they will have one. And the other people that will buy this will be people that play Lumineth, and they will buy one because you can only field one. It's a named character. You can't have multiples of it in your army. So you're only ever going to buy one of these models. So again, let's say this was £100,000. So they need to get, Games Workshop need to get a return on that investment of that £100,000. And basically they need to sell enough to cover that cost and to make some profit as well. They've got an idea of how many it's going to sell because essentially they have... They know how many battle tomes have sold. They know how many of the Lumineth armies have sold. They know how many of the units are being sold. So they have a rough idea of how many of this particular Teclis model is going to sell. So if that's the case, why is Teclis, why is it more than Illyrial? If that's the case, if all those things are equal, why is it £20 more? So like I said, they know roughly how many they're going to sell of this thing because of the sales of the battle tome and everything else. And maybe, just in this instance, because they've already sold, maybe the expectation is that it's a bit lower than they thought it would be. Maybe they know they need to put the price up to cover lower sales of this particular model. So if they want to recoup that £100,000, let's assume they sell to retailers for 50% of the list price. I'm sure that's not the case. I'm sure that they sell them for more than that. And some retailers get a bigger discount because they have bigger stores or chains of stores. And some of those models will go through GW Direct as well. But for the purposes of kind of easy maths and stuff, let's assume they're selling it for to retailers for 50% of that price we see on the GW website there. So if the model was £85 retail, at RRP, selling to retailer, GW make £42.50, selling it at half price to them. They need to sell 2,353 units just to recoup their £100,000 cost. We then put that up to £105. They're selling it to retailers for £52.50. They now only need to sell £1,905. So instantly they've brought it down by 350 sort of less sales that they have to make. And this is really what it all comes down to. This is the secret of GW's pricing. It all comes down to the cost that they've invested in it, that they need to recoup, divided by the number of sales they're likely to make, and that gives them a return on investment. This whole thing is about a return on the amount they've invested. If it was just about kind of high volume stuff all the time, you would see more marine models, which is no doubt why we see so many of them. But we'd never see these big centerpiece models if they didn't come in at those high prices. They would just never sell enough of them to basically to cover that cost. And I know people will say, well, if they drop the price, more people would buy them. You'd need significantly more people to buy them to justify that drop in price. Like if you half the cost and you only sold double the amount, you're still just breaking even. You're not making sort of a lot of profit, which is what Games Workshop need to do because they're a public company. So if you add on to that the profit as well, what you end up with is basically happy shareholders. And that essentially really is that's kind of like the secret to what they do. It's all based, it's got nothing to do with basically the manufacturing cost. It probably costs the same to sculpt and manufacture 10 Marines and produce them. I mean, plastic is essentially the only difference. You maybe need one less die, potentially, who knows? But essentially, it's going to cost pretty much the same to make that techless model as it was going to cost to make maybe 10 Marines. The difference is how many people will buy them, how many sales are they going to make, and that is essentially, that's the reason behind it. If you've got a model that is only going to sell one of it to a customer, unfortunately the prices are going to be much higher. It's the reason tanks are higher and vehicles are higher. It's the reason that hero models are higher. It's the like named leaders, anything that is a named leader, it's the reason that they're higher in price as well. It all comes down to that. So that's the reason. If you want to find out more and what people are saying about it, please come over and check out the live stream, and you can join in and have a look at the comments as well. Thanks for watching my video. I hope that you really enjoyed it. And if you did, why not consider clicking on the suggested video below to see more of the work that I've done. If you'd like to support the long-term sustainability of this channel, why not consider checking out my Patreon, where you can pledge and support from as little as $2 a month. And there is lots of different tiers and bonuses which will give you access to a private Discord server. It will give you free t-shirts, free mugs, a podcast every month, and a number of other things, including getting your name at the end of every video, like these awesome folks who already support me now.